for your time in joining us here. If you wouldn't mind just briefly introducing yourselves. We'll start with Norbert.
Yes. My name is Norbert Weidinger. I'm Deputy CIO of the City of Vienna in Austria.
And I'm Michael Dixon. I manage IBM's Smartest Cities business around the world.
I'm Liora Schechter. I'm the CIO of Tel Aviv-Jaffa Municipality in Israel.
And I'm Alan Shark. I'm the Executive Director of the Public Technology Institute in the Washington, D.C. area, and also Professor of Practice at Rutgers University.
Starting off with the smart city concept, it's a term that's been around for a number of years now. Indeed, IBM trademarked the term smarter cities. Michael, if I could start with you, what would you highlight a particular success of the smart city concept?
Well, I think the concept has moved from a general understanding that technology can make a difference to cities to a far more pragmatic approach now, where cities are tackling specific issues like transport or water or energy management or waste management or environmental issues, and applying those technologies to get business return and much better levels of service at much better cost efficiency. So I think the difference really is it's moved from a good rallying cry to very specific results.
Mm-hmm. And Liora, in Tel Aviv, it's been one of the leading cities in smart city aspects. What would you say has been a particular highlight or a success for your city?
For us, the focus of smart cities is really about the relationship between the municipality and the residents. We are trying to change the more conventional relationship and bring value to the residents. We are trying to engage the residents into the activities in the municipalities. So when we succeed in bringing value to the residents, we have got a successful project.
Alan, from an education perspective?
Well, I look at smart cities as an opportunity. And when I think of that, and I see it being practiced in many locations, what makes a difference is a new way of governing. And I mean, all these different utilities and government functions are continuing to employ better technology. What they're not doing is communicating with each other. What smart cities does is it's a new way of governing where somebody's got to break down the silos and say, what we're doing here can help you over here, and do this cross-pollination. So it is a different way and a more positive way of managing resources and getting all these different systems to better communicate.
Okay. Are there any specific lessons that we've learned so far that if you would advise to a new CIO starting tomorrow? Norbert, what would you advise a CIO starting their job tomorrow?
I think for us in Vienna there are quite a few outstanding topics. First of all is, as a little bit in the sense Alan mentioned, smart cities is changing the mindset overall, changing the mindset how we look at problems, how we search for solutions for problems. This is first. The second is in Vienna we have a saying that smart city must be combined with the ranger principle, left nobody behind. Mm-hmm. Because when we look at the beginning of smart city projects, there's a lot of technology which is not available for everybody. And our principle is to be open-minded for all.
I think a good lesson is to try to position yourself as the resident and see what will bring value to you. And if you got a good idea of what will give value to you, then it's a good idea to implement for the residents of your city.
I think I'd like to add too that I think building on Alan's point, fundamentally this is about transformation, and I think that the thing that we have learnt is that it's not possible to just somehow do a Smarter Cities initiative to the side in some way as an increment to what the city is already doing. I think you raise a very valid point, Leonora, around if it doesn't give better services to people and it doesn't reduce the total cost, it's unlikely to work. And so the only way in our experience to both increase the level of service and to give better value for money is to transform existing systems. And we increasingly find that the analytics that underpins many of these issues today give you the management information you need to get past perhaps some of the historical practices that are well and truly entrenched, particularly through social media and two-way communication with the people, to get to a level where the services are really quite different. And in our view, it's quite analogous to what we see in the private sector, where the private sector typically responds to market demand by changing itself to reflect what its people need or what they think their clients need. And I think the same kind of concepts operate in smarter cities.
You mentioned cost and getting more value, being more creative with less. The last 5-6 years, half decade, a lot of word austerity has impacted a lot on cities. Has this helped cities become smarter? They have to be more creative. Has this pushed the whole idea of smarter cities, do you think?
I think they've become more fiscally responsible. I would start with that. I think the recession has changed the way people look at managing cities. At the same time, I have to add another thing that's happening, at least in the United States, and that is that more people are moving back to the cities than have been moving out of the cities. So there's an influx coming into the cities for a lot of quality of life reasons. So yeah, cities are doing more with less. There's a pressure to do even more, and the question is, can technology help? You know, is it an expense or is it an investment? I'd argue it's an investment because without these tools, we will not accomplish the things that we can accomplish. So I see technology as an enabler. And to an earlier question, you asked about the role of the CIO. We did a conference about 4 years ago on this very topic. And the CIOs kind of sat back and they said, well, we don't know anything about this. And there was really a lack of interest. And I've been working for the last 4 years saying, you know, if you are not part of this, you're not part of it. And, you know, to me, if it involves technology, information systems, to me, the CIO is going to play a very important role and to make sure that they're part of any discussions to see how all these moving parts come together and work with the political folks to make sure that they're champions. And I don't think the CIO is the champion, but it's going to be the mayor. It's going to be some high-level elected administrator in tandem with elected leader that's got to be the champion to make this work.
Anyone else like to?
Yeah, I agree with Alan. Excuse me. Because I see the CIO as the enabler. We do not know the business as much as other people, but we do know technology. We know the current trends in technology. We can imagine what can be done with the current trends. So in Tel Aviv, for instance, we are sitting in meetings with every department of the municipality, trying to think together what can bring value to them. And when we are getting a good idea, then it's easy to sell and easy to achieve budget for it.
I think there are 4 very clear things that have happened in the last few years. And those 4 things we see as trends in cities in all parts of the world. Firstly is a very strong focus on using much better information to optimise existing assets. And I think it's back to your point, Alan, that in the past perhaps things haven't been used as efficiently as they might. And this is not just standard efficiency, this is saying things like the roads are very busy and public transport very busy during peak hours, but basically vacant for the rest of the day. Or schools are crowded between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. 5 days a week, 40 weeks a year. The rest of the time they're vacant. So this is about using our assets much better. So I think there's an issue around optimisation. The second is around capacity. And capacity is typically very expensive. If you're talking about adding a new subway line or adding a new water supply or adding new electricity source or capability, These are very big infrastructure projects, and typically we see public-private partnerships now playing a role in these kinds of activities as cities work to innovative models to fund increases in capacity. The third thing that I think has been astonishingly interesting in the last few years is the rise of entrepreneurs and innovators. And I make the point that it's kind of like cutting the grass, and you bring all the grass into a haystack, and the city seeks to find the information they need. But when they do that, there are an enormous number of entities that kind of gather around the haystack and start looking for their own needles. So the innovation, the rise of bright young people, typically from the next generation, who see unlimited potential in moving through the analytics and the data that these systems provide, I think is a huge source. And if we don't have to look very long to see the great service that many of these entrepreneurs provide with interesting apps and interesting ways to change the way we live our lives through their entrepreneurial capability. And then the fourth thing is business value. And back to what I was saying earlier, if you get a financial return from these projects, then the projects move quickly and the results are welcomed. And we see again the cities around the world and municipalities that are having the biggest impact in delivering better levels of service and higher levels of cost efficiency work out that that's what they're going to do. So those four things around optimisation, capacity, innovation, and then business value, I think, are really changing the way in which smarter cities are evolving.
You mentioned yesterday, Michael, in your presentation that there's every 30 hours, I believe, there's more data created than
so I read last week.
Previous than before 2005.
Yeah.
Is there too much data, and what tools can we use, or would you advise cities to use? Or if I could ask the CIOs after.
Well, the CIOs by all means. I don't think there's too much data. There's just a huge amount. The difficulty is finding out what it says. And so I think analytics is critically important. Having the ability to build models, to test hypotheses, to use predictive modelling to change the way we design and develop these kind of capabilities is critical. It's not going to be a matter of saying we've got too much, let's turn it off. People are adding myriad data sources every week, so we're not going to get less. The challenge is to find out what can we use of value amongst what's there.
Norbert, what tools do you use in your day-to-day work to manage the data?
We set up quite big data warehouse project in this year, and for me, in the reality of the city of Vienna, yes, it's so that yes, there is a lot of data, and of course we have the possibility to use it, but at the moment we have not the use cases to have very clear added values out of big data projects, because there are a lot of restrictions in Europe regarding data production laws, so a lot of questions we can ask here at the table, but not regarding real data. And this is first. The second is there are a lot of applications dealing with quite big amounts of data which are already in use since years, so there's nothing really new for us. And some parts will come into use in next years. I'm very strong convinced in the field of healthcare. Mm-hmm. There I see a really big amount of data to explore, where we are allowed to do it because it's so to say, inside the healthcare sector. But we are not allowed to combine it with other topics.
Okay. Leora, in Tel Aviv's case?
We are using analytics in many fields of operation. Like when operating the city, we collect data about all kinds of businesses inside the city. We are trying to look around the business and see what should be the policy of the municipality towards the business. We collect data about the expenses and incomes of the municipality. We collect data how people are consuming our services and information, and trying to analyze everything and try to have actions that will make the operation of the city hall better in the future.
Okay. There are a lot of leading cities like Tel Aviv and Vienna that have taken the smarter city concept by the horns. Some other cities are kind of watching and waiting from the wings. Alan, what would you say to them to encourage them to be more smarter city participants?
Well, I look at the elected leaders and I always say nobody wants to be the mayor of a dumb city. So yeah, they're watching, and I think they want to have a clear path, and I don't think there is a clear path right now. I think it almost has to be customized to where city is in its infrastructure and where their priorities are. But they are listening. They are very, very interested, and I think we need to do a better job of showing them a roadmap or some options, because the biggest obstacle is they think it's too expensive before they even begin to look at it. And then if you can make the value case and say, well, that sounds, I understand that, but here's what we can do, and here's how you could save money, here's how other cities, and this is relatively new. I think we're going to find more cities, and I think we need more contests. I think we need to find ways to encourage people, because sometimes mayors, they love to get, a designation from somebody. We are a designated smart city, or something like that. That little push is what I think is required, because nobody's against it. They're afraid of it from the money point of view.
Okay. The question now to the CIOs, do other cities approached you, either within your own countries or around the world, about your example? Are they coming to you for advice?
Yes, after Tel Aviv won the prize in Barcelona, of course, there was a lot of echo, and a lot of cities from Israel and from Europe are coming to us, and we are very happy to share in the knowledge that we purchased, and we are very happy to learn as well. Other cities have done very successful projects as well, and it's good to share information.
Yes, it's the same in Vienna. We have a lot of visitors discussing with us the principles of Smart City project in Vienna, and of course we try to learn from all visitors.
This question I will go around the room. What's one critical factor that you would highlight that a city has to have in place if it's going to succeed as a smart city?
For me, the most crucial factor is the political commitment. Absolutely on top.
Look, I agree. I think it's leadership, and I said yesterday I don't believe the obstacles to smarter city projects are essentially practical or technological or financial, for that matter. I think they're organisational, political and cultural, and those things start at the top, and certainly the projects that we've been involved in around the world that many consider leading in what they achieve, I can take you to the individual who decided that was important and made sure that it happened and was accountable to their constituents to get those results. So I absolutely agree, it's leadership.
I agree with you both, and I would like to add that because I am a CIO, it's very important to have a strong partner from the business, because you cannot deploy smart city as a CIO. So you have to have a good partnership to deploy smart city.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to echo. It's leadership, but it's building a team. You need a smart cities team, and it has to be led by the highest possible person. CIO has to be involved. The business operations have to be involved. And it may be, different people coming into this group at different times, but it's not a one-person show, it's not a two-person show. It is an institutional change, but you do need one champion. for sure, but that person's got to be smart enough to bring in the right people.
Great. Is there anything else that someone wanted to mention or make a comment on to wrap up?
The only thing that I think is really important to understand, it keeps the four of us in work, I think it's not a binary thing. I don't think cities are smart or not smart. I think it's a period of evolution. And, you know, I said yesterday, I think the Romans, if you look at what they achieved, and the Greeks 2,000 years ago, they were very, very smart. And I think people are doing interesting things now, and they're applying technologies in new ways. And I think we're only beginning to see the potential of what we'll see in decades to come. So I think it's it's an evolutionary process. And Alan spoke about it earlier. It depends where a city is in its particular evolution. And I think we'll see a lot of that as cities, as a group, move down the path.
If I could, to Michael's point, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I have to kind of step back a minute. Okay, ancient Rome is no longer here, and ancient Greece is no longer here. We have a list of cities that haven't made it. So my point is, to me, smart cities is a quest. And you might get an award for what you did at a moment in time, but you can never sit back and say, oh, we're here, we're a smart city, that's it.
But they did invent water distribution.
They did wonderful things,
some good
absolutely. Things. But it's more, it's like excellence. You don't get there, it's a journey. You've got to continue to improve the processes and not just say, we're there, that's it, mission accomplished.
Yeah.
For me, it's a question that in some time coming, it's not the question of being a smart city, but it's being a well-managed city. It will not be another possibility to manage the city well than being smart.
I will add that I believe that what's important is to create an ecosystem because the municipality is not the only one that can provide services for the residents. So it's important to involve the private sector, it's important to involve startups, which we have a lot in Israel and in Tel Aviv. And together, when we are helping each other, then we can bring richer and better services for the residents.